He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Ultra busy Marlow Show today. We've got three guests for you. We've got Senator Joni Ernst, we've got Congresswoman Mary Miller, and we've got Jill Simonian from PragerU talking about how to educate the youths. Tons of information, breaking news in here as well. And should we brand it like Ladies Thursday? But then that's sort of, it's like I got to commit to doing it every Thursday, which is not going to happen. But three female guests in a row. It should all be great. Look, we're very feminist here on the Marlow Show. But before we get into it, a couple of huge news items that I will give you quick takes on. The first one is this Israeli embassy staffers being shot and killed in Washington, D.C., I guess outside of a museum. This is just devastating stuff. One of the victims is a Christian. The suspect shouted, "Free, free Palestine." Someone who was radicalized apparently in Chicago, seems like from the online slews, a hard left activist. And this is one of these ones where we're going to learn over the next few days what's happened. Danny Danon, who's the Israeli ambassador to the UN, who I've interviewed a couple of times. I was trying to get him on the show at some point, but he said this is a consequence of calls for the Intifada and lies about genocide on campus. I don't know if he was radicalized on campus, but it's just quite noteworthy that what we've been witnessing is this normalization of radical language against Israelis and against Jews. And the Free Palestine stuff is the Hamas's charter. They want to wipe Israel off the map. They want the river to the sea. That is their goal, and they have no problem with this sort of behavior. And just know that we've normalized this on our campuses. The online space is getting increasingly tolerant of anti-Semitism, and a lot of lies that are out there about Israelis wanting to commit genocides in Gaza, which is just patently false. And this all is going to build towards events like this. And so I don't know exactly what radicalized this guy. We will learn, but it sounds like he was repeating the exact same chants, the exact same slogans that we've been hearing on our campuses. So it scares me because, first of all, these are two lives that were lost unnecessarily, and it seemed like young, vibrant people. And it was also one of these things where it was one of the gentlemen who was killed was a Christian. So he was an Israeli Christian, which is just another unbelievable factor here, is that this is not something that is just about Jews. It's also about Israel in general, and does not have a right to exist in the eyes of some of these murderous terrorists. And that is the only country on earth where they feel this way. So it's a Christian and Jewish couple, Sarah Lynn Milgram, 26, and Yaron Lashinsky, 28. May they rest in peace, and hopefully we can raise awareness about some of the anti-Semitism that is rampant in this country as well. So terrible stuff, terrible way to start the day. And we will have more details on Breitbart.com for you as well. Other stuff that's happening. The big, beautiful bill has advanced. So this, I note this, important to note this. I recorded with Senator Ernst just right before I'm talking to you now. So she knew the bill had passed. Mary Miller, we got in the can last night. So she did not know it had passed yet. So just keep that in mind for the timeline issues that occur in some of these podcasts. We're glad to see it advance. We're glad to see the bill advance. It's still got some issues in it. And I will tell you, I got my ear to the ground in Capitol Hill yesterday, and there are some concerns that some of these rural Trump voting Republicans could lose Medicaid with the current structure of the bill. Now, we didn't even have a bill yesterday, and now it's passed the House. So it was by a 1-vote margin. So I don't fully have understood and committed to memory everything that's in the bill. We will endeavor to give that to you over the next couple of days, and probably throughout next week will be fine. But the Senate is going to come up with a slightly different version, I think. And so we'll have a few things that will definitely need to be worked out, but we are moving forward. We're moving this thing along and getting the Trump agenda in motion. But that said, there are some concerns. We got to look at that Medicaid stuff. We got to look perhaps at some SNAP stuff. And I don't know where the SALT deduction shakes out in the end. So there's a few things that we're looking at, but it is on the move. And as always, more details, Breitbart.com, all day, every day. A couple of other items worth pointing out to you. The Amazon CEO, Andy Jassy, said that Trump's tariffs have not impacted prices on consumer demand. or consumer demand. So price is not going up at Amazon, and it is pretty interesting that we were promised that everything was going to be inflationary due to Trump's tariffs. We're not seeing that from the biggest or second biggest retailer in the country as of now. So I'm not saying that some of the prices on some goods from China won't go up a little bit one time. It could happen. But remember, we were told that Biden's inflation was transitory. It was not, stuck with us. And now we were told that Trump's tariffs are going to bring big inflation. Not seeing any of that as of now. A couple of judges acting like presidents. Federal judges blocked Trump administration's mass layoffs at the education department. So this is something that's just breaking as we're going to the air. U.S. District Judge Myung Jae Jun, I think that's it. Department must be able to carry out functions and its obligations under the Department of Organization Act and other relevant statutes is mandated by Congress. So the objection here is that you can't shut down the Department of Education from the executive. This was a concern of mine. I thought that this could be an issue. So the Congress does technically need to abandon. If we're going to cut a bureaucracy, it does seem to fall under the powers granted to Congress. So my thought would be you fire everyone and you just leave one person in there and that's it. But this judge, I guess, is suggesting that even that might not be good enough. So we'll see how that gets adjudicated. But just note, all these district judges, one after the next, are mini presidents blocking elements of Trump's agenda. It's why we must win more elections, and we must make sure that the bench is filled with constitutionally minded conservatives as much as possible. Another Biden-appointed judge objecting to Trump's deportation of illegal aliens convicted of murder, rape, child sex crimes, all with federal deportation orders. John Binder's got a big write-up of this at Breitbart News. The efforts by Judge Brian Murphy, U.S. District Court, District of Massachusetts, appointed by Biden. And we've got illegal alien criminals that have been gotten deportations from ICE, from Mexico, Cuba, Laos, Burma, Vietnam, South Sudan, and all of them are we're having a hard time deporting them because their countries will not accept them, even though they're convicted of murder, rape, child sex crimes, etc. We continue to struggle to get all the deportations necessary, but just know what the left is all about. The left is all about defending the indefensible, the murderers and rapists and child sex criminals in our midst. That's who they're prioritizing over the American citizen in law and order. So even though we should not have these struggles, it should provide ample clarity to what the Biden-appointed judges are all about. Another report, U.S. Army is changing back transgender soldiers' records to their birth sex. Another minor win there. Good stuff. We like that. We like a world where where there is sanity and where science matters, where facts matter. It's nice. It'll never be perfect, but it feels like that's a good place to start doing basic stuff like that, like honoring basic biology and science. All right, that's my intro. We'll do Senator Ernst first. So you'll hear from her, Mary Miller, Jill Simonian from PragerU. These are great people doing great stuff. Let's hear from them. What happens when a culture starts trading truth for comfort? Live Not by Lies is a bold new docuseries by Angel Studios. It uncovers how soft totalitarianism is quietly taking root in the West through censorship, digital surveillance, and the erosion of free thought. Inspired by Rod Dreher's best-selling book, the series features firsthand accounts from survivors of communism who recognize the warning signs because they lived through them themselves. The stories are raw, deeply moving, and they're drawing parallels between yesterday's totalitarian regimes and today's cultural climate. This isn't just about history. This is about right now and what we risk if we stay silent. Live Not by Lies is a challenge to every viewer to reject comfort at the expense of conscience and to stand firm in faith, family, and freedom. Streaming now on Angel Guild, join today by visiting angel.com/Marlow. That's angel.com/Marlow. All right. I always enjoy talking to Senator Joni Ernst because I feel like I actually get a sense of what's going on in the Senate after we talk, which is nice because I don't like to just rely on, Politico to try to figure out what's going on, which is the Politico deserves to take some flack. They do. All right, Senator, there's so much to get to today, but it's It is. It seems it would like it'd be a mistake to not give you a chance to react to what happened outside the Israeli embassy, outside that museum, with a targeted attack, a terror attack by, I guess, a guy who's radicalized, seems like a socialist American, who's chanting "Free Palestine," gunning down not just a Jewish woman but a Christian man. It's hard to fathom this type of evil that exists in our country sometimes, but I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And it is devastating. Of course, the loss of life, the loved ones' families, it's just awful, and a clear-cut example of domestic terrorism. And it's coming from a message that's been perpetuated by the far left, and just their hatred of anyone who might be different than them. So I think we have seen devastating wars all around the globe. President Trump is trying to bring these wars to an end. And this is what we see on our home shores. And it's very sad that we see this here in the United States of America.
Yeah, what's interesting is at this event where this took place, it was people who were trying to get humanitarian aid to war zones. These are the type of people who would want peace. So anyone who would be chanting "Free Palestine," this does not feel like the right target of groups of people to attack.
But that's the ignorance that you find in some of these groups, and most certainly with this individual. And again, there are so many of these radicalized people that are out there that don't want to see us working together to find solutions. They don't want to see President Trump be successful in achieving peace in the Middle East or between Russia and Ukraine. It's just sheer hatred that's out there. Yesterday afternoon, I was on the floor of the Senate visiting with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand on trying to find ways, just as they were doing at this event, trying to find ways to pull more partners in outside of the United States to help with some of these conflicts. People don't want to see us trying to resolve these issues. They just want hate to remain. They are so driven by it. And in this case, they went to that ultimate extreme act, which has now resulted in the loss of 2 innocent lives and devastated many, many other lives.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that this type of stuff could continue. I just am very fearful that this will be championed by certain groups of people online, but we will stay posted on that. Senator, let's move to the work of the Congress. Last night, or really early this morning, the big, beautiful bill passed. I think we're rooting for the big, beautiful bill in the Marlow audience and the Breitbart audience, but it's not without some faults. 2 questions. First of all, can you give me a sense of the Senate timeline, the time horizon that you guys have to work out some details? And can you give us any insight into what could potentially be amended from your end?
Well, certainly we also want to see the big, beautiful bill succeed. Now, what it looks like in that end form may be different, and I'd take a little different stance maybe than even some of the House members, in that because I chair the Doge caucus and I've worked on what I call my squeal work for over 10 years now. I think this is an opportunity to be very aggressive about getting rid of the waste in the federal government. And so I shared that message. There was a small group of us that was working and kind of reviewing what the House had passed. We were visiting amongst ourselves. And there were several members that agree with me that this is really, for many of us, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to right-size the federal government and reshape the way we do business. So I almost would rather be a little more aggressive. And my message was that we can write our own Senate bill. We can take what the House has brought to us, and I appreciate their hard work, but we should be aggressive. And then we can come together and work out these differences. But for the Trump administration, for all of us that would love to see a lot of the frivolous spending go away, where we want to support our military, strengthen the borders, whatever is our issues. We need to be aggressive. We have a midterm election coming up in about a year and a half, and we need to show our constituents results. And again, President Trump is the only one so far during my time in the Senate, probably since I was a child with Ronald Reagan, where we have seen a true opportunity to make a real difference in the way we exact federal government.
Yeah, I think this is where I'm at as well. So what are the cuts? You're the expert on this stuff. What are the additional cuts that you feel like you should be targeting and hopefully will make it into the final version of the bill?
Well, I do think we need to take another look at Medicaid and the fraud that is in Medicaid, those that are ineligible for Medicaid. We need to scrutinize that even more so than the House did. I think we need to look at where we are with SNAP and making sure, and this is my message. What I am saying is that these programs were initially started for, the populations that are most vulnerable here in the United States, those programs, whether it be Medicaid, SNAP, were meant for the most vulnerable.
Right.
We have many individuals that have taken advantage of this. There were Biden rules that were put into place that made it very easy to receive these types of benefits,
yes,
but very difficult to disenroll those people when they did better or when they got a job. They still remained on Medicaid rolls. So we need to go back and take a look at those rules. And again, we're not cutting benefits for anyone that the program was intended for.
Sure.
What we are doing is tightening it up to make sure that we can continue delivering on those benefits for the people that it was intended to benefit.
So the Medicaid thing seems to be the most contentious of all the debated issues that I'm seeing, because there is deep concern, I think, even amongst Republicans, particularly rural Republicans, which, of course, you represent many of those, who are concerned that those are the types of people who could lose health care during these cuts. Can we offer some assurances that that's not going to be in the final bill?
Yes, we can offer those assurances. So again, going back to those that are truly eligible for the program, maybe you are a single mother with a disabled child or a child going through a medical emergency, making sure that that child and that mother if that mother is a caregiver, full-time caregiver for that child, making sure that they are covered. I think it's really important. And again, I don't want to rush through the bill. I think we'll miss a lot and have unintended consequences if we move too quickly. But I do think that we need to take our time in scrutinizing those populations that are eligible and those that would not be eligible. I think the work requirement is very, very important for those that are able-bodied adults without dependents. There's no reason that a 30-year-old man, even in Iowa, that's not disabled and has no dependents, there is no reason that individual should not be working. And believe me, the work requirement it's a pretty low bar, and it doesn't even have to be paid work. It can be work for the community. So, we need to work through this, but we want to make sure, again, that my Iowans, that others that would be eligible for the program receive the full benefits. So again, we want to show that empathy. We want to show care for our constituencies. That's extremely important to all of us. But at the same time, we have to recognize that we are on a trajectory as the United States to get to a point where if we don't start focusing on our vulnerable populations and putting others back out into the workforce, making them ineligible, again, an able-bodied adult with no dependents, we will continue to add to our national debt. We're sitting at $36 trillion, and we won't be able to sustain. What we don't want to see is Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security failing in the future because we refuse to do our jobs today.
Yeah, one other angle on the debt is that, of course, I'm pro cutting any waste, fraud, and abuse, as any conservative would be. But one thing that would be really helpful is if the economy booms. You focus on that as well. You gave us a little exclusive yesterday or a couple days ago, Breitbart, talking about revitalizing Americans' industrial base, starting with small businesses. Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, we've got a bill, and it's a bipartisan bill, Alex, so even the Democrats agree with this. What we have heard consistently from small businesses, especially when you get into the manufacturing space, is that they have limited access to capital, and we know that machinery and so forth, if you're expanding a manufacturing line, it is very expensive. We have not updated the small business 7A and 504 loan program, the caps on those loans for a very long time. So the cap previously was at $5 million. We're asking to double that up to $10 million to accommodate for inflation, the increase of prices for machinery. But we're hearing now people are really excited about this. And again, it's through these loan programs, through the SBA, which would be through your local banker that does 7A loan programs, not directly through the SBA. They would be through your local bank, through your local lender, and that's the way we believe things should be done. But the bill is called the Made in America Manufacturing Finance Act. We really want to bring manufacturing back to the United States, and in order to do that, we need to help our small businesses do this, and President Trump is very excited about it. The Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler, is fully on board, so we're on our way, Alex.
Yeah, and she does a really good job keeping my audience in mind, which I'm really grateful for. So if you want to get involved, reach out to your congressmen and senators on that one for sure, if you like what you're hearing. More details for you at Breitbart.com on that one. Senator, let's talk about Doge a little bit, because Doge's PR has gotten worse somehow. We're huge champions of cuts, but I feel like I've not read a lot of good news. You guys were on fire with the good news during the USAID stuff, but that's kind of dried up, and now everyone's writing what a jerk Musk is, which is it feels like we should be focused on the cuts and not on the is Musk a jerk conversation, but that seems to be where it's gone. How is it going? Tell us what you guys are cutting, what you're finding, and where are we at in terms of your estimation on how much we've cut?
Yeah, I think it's exciting, and we are actually doing quite well. So I think with Elon Musk, I've actually worked really, really well with him, and I appreciate that he's given us a platform to actually get things done. So this is exciting. And one of the things that we're focusing on right now, and I just did what I call my squeal reel. I did a squeal reel earlier this week on GSA credit cards. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go to the Doge website, you can see all of the work that they are doing from the administration side. We're trying to do our own messaging from our caucuses in the Senate and the House. But with the GSA credit cards, I've spoken to Elon Musk about this. I've spoken to Steve Davis, his chief operating officer, about this, and got an update from them. Right now, the federal government through GSA credit cards has 4.6 million active credit cards and accounts. Okay, well, we have a little less than half that number in federal employees. So we're trying to figure out where the heck all of these credit cards are. And what we have found is that there's a huge amount of fraud and abuse within the credit card system. So think about all the federal holidays that we have. Most of the time, most of the federal employees I know are not working on these federal holidays, say New Year's Eve. But guess when a lot of those credit cards are used? They're used New Year's Eve. Where? Nightclubs, bars. Sunday afternoons. Okay, big UFC fight or something, pay-per-view. Wow. What? We're using a GSA card to get that fight on a big flat screen TV at home. We're catching a lot of this. There's cash withdrawals at ATMs at casinos. So my question is, why was nobody auditing the statements and calling into question all of these purchases, all of the withdrawals, why on earth we have so many credit cards. Well, just last night, Steve Davis gave me an update. They've canceled about 500,000 of those cards so far. They've got 4.1 million more to audit, but they're on their way. But folks, over the course of these credit cards in the last year, we've seen about $60 billion worth put on 4.6 million credit cards. How does that happen? How does that happen?
So if Musk has to exit for whatever reason to attend to his many businesses and do other things that are meaningful to him and meaningful to the world, hopefully, do you guys feel like Doge is in good hands? I know the Doge caucus will continue, I'm sure, in the Senate, but do we feel like the program will go on and continue to identify cuts and assure we get them through?
Yeah, I think so, Alex. And I had a long conversation with Elon about 2 weeks ago or so, and was visiting about how this will go as he's, moving back into his own businesses. And he'll still be checking in once or twice a week. Most certainly, he's still going to be involved. And this is not just spur of the moment movement. This really does need to be a lifestyle for our federal government. And so we're going to stay connected with Elon, but of course we have Steve Davis that we'll be working closely with. And we still have all of those Doge leads out in our agencies. So at some point, Congress will really need to embrace this. And we've got great partners in the Senate Doge caucus, great leaders and members over in the House. If we can get a number of provisions codified, which really goes to good governance, transparency, spending, reducing deficit spending, tackling the debt. If we can get some of those over the finish line and looking at reconciliation, this is one way to do some of those moves, we'll be on a much better path than we've seen in the past. But believe me, many of us have worked on this for a decade or more now. And so for those of us that have been living this for a while, we're going to keep on with this. But the kicker is for the American people to know that, yeah, sometimes it's painful. If we are eliminating programs that you think are really cool, I know that's painful, but we have to recognize that maybe this is not the federal government's job to plant wildflowers by the interstate or, whatever it happens to be. We have 36 trillion in debt. We got to take care of it.
Exactly right. That's the first stuff you got to cut is the non-essentials. I mean, right. Do you feel like that, because you've been on this forever, so has Rand Paul, do you feel like the Doge team is identifying new stuff that you guys hadn't even seen?
Some of it, yes. So the credit card one we had questioned a couple years ago, but we did not know the full extent of it. Obviously, when we are writing letters or just making phone calls over to various agencies, we don't see the full picture. And I can tell you there are many times that I have gone to different department inspector general's offices, and they will simply choose not to respond. So this has been a real issue, especially in the last 4 years under the Biden administration. They were not transparent. And I work with a lot of outside organizations too, watchdog type organizations. It is actually faster, or it has been in the past, faster for me to do a Freedom of Information request through an outside organization and get the information than a U.S. Senator, me, writing a letter to the agency head.
Wow, unbelievable. Senator, I know you got to run because I know your team wants you out of here, but I can't resist. You just brought it up. I just realized in the last week or two that Joe Biden apparently had mental decline. I don't know how we missed this for so long, and it just sprung it on us all of a sudden that he was in mental decline. And CNN of all places was what broke the news. I'm sort of confused by all this. We all knew he had dementia and was not the sharpest tool in the shed. And then I don't entirely understand this news cycle, but what's your take?
Well, okay, Alex, I'm positive we've talked about this before. I don't understand how mainstream media missed this, but like I have said this many times over, but never trust someone who says his uncle was eaten by cannibals. Was there cognitive decline? Yes. I don't trust him, and most certainly never trusted the people around him.
I got to tell you, when I wrote my book on the Bidens, Breaking Biden, and I found this video of Joe referring to his sister Valerie as the love of his life, and I looked up the media reports on it, and there were zero. There were so few, it was literally zero. Even Breitbart missed it somehow, where I had to watch it a couple of times to make sure it wasn't an AI. And I could not believe that you call your sister the love of your life and not one media outlet.
Yeah, I was sorry. I'm sorry for the facial expressions there. That was a little cringy.
It's kind of off-putting. So it's hey, look, better late than never, I guess, from the media. Senator, you've been really generous. Thanks to your staff for giving you a few extra minutes with me. I appreciate that as well. And we'll talk soon, I hope.
Anytime. Thanks, Alex.
The media is broken. For decades, big cable and legacy media have filtered information to hide the truth. But thanks to podcasts and new media like this show, the truth can break through, providing voices and views the legacy outlets block from the air. But big cable still has one major way to control information, and that's access. They do this by limiting access to something called spectrum, the invisible airwaves that power affordable wireless internet, and by forcing you into their bundles, keeping independent media out of reach. Trump and Republicans in Congress have a chance to do something big here by making more spectrum available and breaking big cable's stranglehold on information. So there's a couple things you could do to find out more. You can go to endthecableopoly.org. That's endthecableopoly.org for more information about how to make more spectrum available. And if you're convinced, you should call your senators and your members of Congress and say, hey, why don't you work with President Trump and try to make more spectrum available? So endthecableopoly.org to find more. All right, I'm joined by Congresswoman Mary Miller from Illinois right now, who's been popping up quite a bit. She's getting out there on behalf of farmers, on behalf of women who are losing sports to men, and of course, just like everyone in the Republican side of the congressional aisle right now, debating the big, beautiful bill, which we're all rooting for, but we want to be as good as possible. Congresswoman, let's start there. The big, beautiful bill is moving along. I'm refusing to call it the one big, beautiful bill. I like the BBB branding that Trump is stealing from Biden. I don't think anyone's pointing that out. I like the BBB. It sounds good to me. But tell me where we're at with this, because this is moving pretty rapidly at the moment.
Well, there's still a lot of wrangling going on. Rules Committee met all night, and there's still wrangling going on. I think we can and should do better. We want to make sure that President Trump's priorities are reflected in the bill. There are a lot of great things in it, like ensuring that illegal aliens are not receiving federal benefits like Medicaid and food stamps, definite common sense, getting resources out to secure the border, also, putting the Tax Cut and Jobs Act into permanent law, very important. But we want to rescind as much money as possible from that green scam. And that is a big issue in my district. They are covering our beautiful country, the best farm ground in the world, with solar panels and windmills, which is neither efficient nor affordable or reliable.
Yeah, I want to get your take also. You're a Republican in a blue state, and I'm the same. And so one of the things that's really interesting for us is the SNAP discussion. I'm sorry, not SNAP, the SALT discussion, the state local tax deduction, which was at $10,000, and it's going to move up. I'm hearing the number is going to end up being $40,000 when it's all said and done. This is one of these things where it's going to help me a lot on a personal level, but it doesn't seem like great politics to me, because it feels like it might disincentivize some people in our states to vote for fiscal conservatives. But am I missing something here? What do you think of it?
I hate it, but it is a thing. It's basically helping the blue states to continue to be irresponsible, bailing them out.
I agree.
It's a gift to the rich donors of these members that are demanding this. But it's so offensive that we would agree to $40,000 to raise it to 40,000 and not get a rollback of the green scam or more reforms in Medicaid to cut waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what other thing that's not in the bill that I was slightly surprised by is it doesn't cut the tax on Social Security completely. I think it increases a deduction to $4,000 or something. But I don't understand why we're taxing people on Social Security benefits. I mean, that's all money that we'd paid in the system years ago. Why tax it again? What are your thoughts there?
Okay, I agree with you, but apparently there's some issue with the Byrd rule in the Senate, and so it's complicated. That's all I can say, but I agree with you. We shouldn't be, we're double and triple taxed as Americans.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me. And it feels like something that maybe there could be, that feels like one that you could do that as an isolated bill. And I feel like Democrats would be on board. I don't think Democrats want to be on record saying we want to tax Social Security benefits. So that feels like one that could pass standalone. So maybe that's something to consider.
I know. Keep hope alive. Well, yesterday they passed the no tax on tips out of the Senate, and the Democrats were on board. So like I say, keep hope alive. We need to just be aggressive and get things codified, get it on the floor, make people vote on it.
Congresswoman, do you intend to ask for your congressional salary to now come as a tip so that you can claim no tax on tips? Because I've already got that in the works at podcasting and at Breitbart, and we're going to do. I only want to be a tip guy now. No, I don't. I do love the no tax on tips, and I'm not shocked that it was a 100-0 vote. Okay, I want to switch gears, talk a little about farmers and tariffs. And you wrote a big piece for us at Breitbart about how we're being taken advantage of on the world stage. This is really apropos. We had a big interview with the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, yesterday, and she's spending a lot of time overseas. She's going around, and she's planning on going around the world and trying to reset trade when it comes to farmers. Speak to me about this issue and what are the major steps we need to be taking.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't know if you know that I'm one of the few farmers left in Congress, and I'm on the Ag Committee, and we're not some giant corporate farm. We're a fourth-generation farm. So I come to, Congress and to the Ag Committee with the experience and the background here. And oh my, I'm so grateful to have an administration here that cares enough to get engaged in the trade issue. For 4 years, we had virtually a non-existent trade policy in ag. And President Trump and Brooke Rollins, they understand using our leverage on the world stage and saying, why are we doing this? Why have we ever agreed to these kind of bad trade policies? And we're super grateful for that. Obviously, I think there's going to be a lag for the farmers and actually seeing prices go up or whatever. But the other thing that is shocking to me and offensive that we've allowed this to happen is that our exports are less than our imports in ag. We have
that's very strange. We should be feeding the world. We should be feeding the world.
But even the amount of beef imports that are coming into our country, we need policies that will promote better to promote production in our own country. It's a national security issue.
Well, why do you think that is? Is it just I struggle to understand it because, I know some of it's green policies out of whack. I come from California where we're the breadbasket of all civilization. And then our green policies completely dried out our state, which is a under discussed issue. Yet President Trump does talk about it, which is great. But how could this have happened? Why wasn't anyone paying attention to it?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to come back on and talk about the green scam another time.
Please.
And how it's ruining, agriculture. But anyway, well, I think it goes back to an overarching picture of America first and Americans first. And President Trump, in his first term, I heard him say that he went overseas, he was meeting with world leaders, and he said to them, I'm for America first, and you should be for your country first. And I thought, well, how absurd that we have a leader that's had to make like an agenda out of this. It should be a given that our leaders are for us first. And for decades, they haven't been. And we've been, tipping everything for other countries. And, I think people have their own personal agendas and they care about how it's helped them and not how it's helped the country. President Trump loves our country. And I don't think he's perfect. Obviously, nobody's perfect. But the fact that he loves our country is amazing motivation. The man, he is so strong to stand up against what's wrong and even to say, why are we doing it this way? When things have been done this way forever, he's the one that's been saying, why are we doing it this way? Why are we not energy independent? And why are we being bullied around the world? Now, obviously, with trade, he's negotiating good trade policies for us.
Very, very important, and thank you for working on that. Let me ask you about stripping illegal aliens of SNAP benefits. This seems like a good idea. Anything to disincentivize more border crossing seems crucial. How is this progressing? I know you're working on this.
Well, yes, I was able to, of course, I'm on the Ag Committee, so I was able to secure a critical provision that stops non-citizens from receiving taxpayer-funded SNAP benefits, which will save taxpayers billions of dollars. But if we want President Trump's deportation policies to work, we have to incentivize people to leave, which means cut off their benefits. The amount of financial benefits people are getting for basically rewarding them to come here illegally is absurd, and it's offensive to the American people. SNAP benefits were meant for Americans who are in need, not illegals who broke the law to enter our country.
One of the discussions we've been having on the show this week is about taxing remittances. There's a 5% remittance tax in the big, beautiful bill for illegal aliens sending money back home. My first thought was that's great news. And then someone pointed out, well, shouldn't that be higher? And I thought, yeah, it should be higher. And then it was being explained to me that if we did that, then that could perhaps backfire for some reason or another. And I just want to know if you'd given that thought or if that was discussed, and because it feels like you're pretty hawkish on immigration issues. Should we be taxing that higher in your view?
Yes, it should be higher, and it has been discussed, yes, but it's another thing that everybody's wrangling about.
Yeah, it feels like it. So it feels like another one to put it. Congress doesn't retire after this bill. So just to note, if something is not satisfactory this time around, you guys can keep chipping away at it. One thing that you've also been working on is trying to take this is a couple of weeks ago, there was a big report in Daily Caller about you're trying to take a sledgehammer to the online porn industry. Online porn is a scourge in this country. It's bad for the soul, and it's really does prey on children, which is, of course, the worst part about it. So what are you doing here, and what realistically can be done in a country with the First Amendment?
Well, first of all, I did with Senator Mike Lee. We have reintroduced a bill called the Screen Act, which is going to require the online porn companies to use age identification technology. And there is amazing technology out there. There's multiple ways that people can identify what their age is, and it is not a violation of the First Amendment right. We have limits to it, and we have protections for our children. Children under 18 cannot go buy a gun. They can't go buy alcohol and other things. And anyway, but also I'm working on pushing back against indecency being presented to our children in public arenas where there's federal dollars flowing, such as schools, libraries, and even the public streets during the Gay Pride Month. It is just terrible. It is grooming of our children.
Yeah.
And, it's time for it to stop.
Yeah, it's also, we've been doing this experiment now for a couple of decades, and it seems like we're a lot less happy. We're having less children. It seems like we're spiritually not doing well. So it's always nice to check in every so often, like, how's this going? The unfettered online porn, it doesn't seem great for all of us. So always nice to see if there's something that can be done about it. One thing that's also noteworthy with the first 100 or so days in this administration is it is sometimes tough for Trump to get done what he wants to get done, even with the power of his executive orders. You signed a letter last week urging Speaker Johnson to speed up the process of codifying executive orders. What is the problem here you're identifying, and then what is the solution?
The problem is that it's not getting done. And yesterday, President Trump came and addressed all of us, and he brought it up, and he said, "Get it done." And it's critical because, as everybody knows, a future Democrat president can reverse his executive orders. I personally have introduced legislation to codify several of them, which is, number one, the Keep Our Girls Safe Act, codifying President Trump's protections, keeping biological men from women's private spaces, and then also defining Male and Female Act to codify President Trump's declaration that there are only two sexes, male and female. But we also need to get the Doge cuts put into law.
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about the Doge cuts because it feels like we got off to this rip-roaring start. There was discussion of the Senator Ernst came on the show, and I'm speaking to her later today, hopefully. And she said that basically they identified $250 billion in cuts almost immediately, and then it feels like the news cycles have gotten a little drier on the Doge front. Do you feel like Doge has completed most of its work, or do you feel like there's a lot more that needs to be done?
Oh, there's so much more to be done, and Elon Musk brought in really smart people. He got the ball rolling. I think the important thing is that Congress needs to act now and get these Doge cuts, put into law. And we need to slash harmful red tape, and we need to get going. And it's not just me, but there's many members that are very passionate about it. And President Trump was very clear yesterday, get busy, get this done.
Yeah, it is important. And also, I think it helps a lot with the fact that if you look at the big, beautiful bill, there's going to be at least discussion of whether or not it's going to be add to the debt, perhaps potentially inflationary. So there's got to be offset by the cuts, got to be offset by tariffs. And so it's a really important part of Trump's whole economic package because it's not just a one-off thing here. It's not just one bill. It's a whole scheme. A lot of dominoes have got to fall. One other thing that you've done is you call for an investigation into Illinois over trans athletes in girls' sports. This is a real issue for your state and a few other states where the leader of the state, who's a hard left governor, J.B. Pritzker, it feels like for us, woke is ending, but for him, he's really leaning into it. He's speaking exactly as though the sort of woke referendum of the last couple of years didn't take place, and he's really locked in on this. So specify for those of us who are not in Illinois how bad it is in your state and what you want to do about it.
Okay, it's really bad. He has not backed off or adapted at all to President Trump's mandate that he got in the last election, and he's wanting to run for president. So you would think that he would do like what Newsom's doing and try to deceive everybody and morph into something different. But he and the radical Illinois Democrats have fully embraced a dangerous gender ideology, defying science and violating federal law, which I sent a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi and Secretary Linda McMahon to investigate Illinois and take immediate action.
Yeah, that is it's really important because I feel like this is one where history is going to look very kindly on us here. I think that the left is not going to be satisfied until men are on the podium for every women's track event and every women's swimming event. And so that's not going to be a popular thing. And so we can, I think, pick up a lot of converts. We've done so well with young men, the conservative movement, over the last couple of years. This is another path to doing very well with young women. And I think that this is really it's horrible for our girls. And I've got a couple girls myself, and I'm hoping this is resolved by the time they get to prep sports. But this is also a huge opportunity to point out how completely insane the left has become at this moment. Congresswoman, you've been generous with your time. Is there anything else that you want to convey to the Breitbart audience today?
I just want to sum up J.B. Pritzker and the Democrats. They side with criminals versus the victims. They side with the trans men versus the girls, and they are violating federal law.
Well put, and I agree with all that. So thank you for pushing back and holding him accountable. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you guys all know I'm a PragerU super fan. I've been a long time donor to PragerU and a someone who consumes their work in my household. And one thing that arrived at my doorstep a couple of days ago, which was super exciting, was a new series, the Trailblazers of America series. I'm holding a couple of them up for those of you who are watching on the streams. My 6-year-old, when he saw these things, he lit up like a firecracker when he saw these books. He's an avid reader. He never puts a book down. I don't know if these are designed exactly for 6-year-olds. They might be aimed at a little bit older, but he just dug right into them. And these are real histories that you can trust. That's what PragerU does. It is no woke BS, just trying to give you the facts. And the woman behind the series, Jill Simonian, is with me now. Jill, thank you for being here on the Alex Marlow Show. I'm so excited about the series. I want to get into the series, but your background is super interesting. You're a TV host. You were a Hollywood, had a great career in Hollywood, and then you eventually started moving in the direction of helping PragerU do histories for children. That's an amazing arc. Could you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. Thank you, Alex. Also, thank you for your support of PragerU. We all know that we cannot do any of this, what we do, education for kindergarten through 12th grade and beyond, of course, without the generous donation. So thank you. Thank you. My background's a little crazy. I went to school, studied communications. I ended up being a Hollywood red carpet reporter for several years. I worked I helped launch a cable network called Reels Channel a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, in fact, and I would do all of the red carpet premieres and the behind the scenes and the film junkets with all the celebrities, the Oscars, everything, you name it. I worked for CNN for a short while, doing entertainment news and pop culture commentary.
Wow.
And then my career sort of twisted and turned a little bit. I went into the parenting and education, family lifestyle space on television, did a ton of television segments from Today Show to Access Hollywood about family lifestyle. And then the lockdown pandemic hit, and I started seeing very clearly what was happening in our public schools. And at that time, right.
Yeah, but this is so big because you're a real life example, because my children, none of them were in school yet during the pandemic. 2 of them weren't even alive, but it's the ones who were alive were not even in school. So I had read all these stories on these parents who reached out to me and said it really opened their eyes watching their kids attempt to do school over their shoulder, over Zoom or the computer or whatever, because they were learning just how bad things had gotten. And you're one of those moms.
Yeah, it was absolute garbage. And I say this as I classify myself as a once fervent advocate, supporter, cheerleader of public schools. My mom was a public school teacher, a fabulous public school teacher who had all the right values in the right way. My grandmother was a public school teacher. My sister, currently a public school teacher in one of the few non-unionized districts here in California. But I had, my husband and I had our kids in public school, and we were happy with everything up to that point, particularly because I think I was very blinded to what was going on, how the unions had severely hijacked our system without any of us regular parents knowing. And when I saw the lack of education that was happening on Zoom. Now, mind you, I know that everyone was trying to do their best at that time, right? And
it was new, sure.
Right. But the thing that really struck me was, well, first of all, a few things at that time. All of these DEI initiatives were, being infiltrated and forced through our district. And there were a lot of us speaking up and saying, hey, what is this state-sanctioned racism? We don't like this. Of course, we were knocked down, told that we were all racist at the time, right? But then I also saw when my kids were actually in class, quotations, on Zoom. One teacher in particular, it was during a lesson about September 11th. And mind you, one of my daughters was in the 4th grade at the time. And I fully recognize that you are not going to tell all of the details of September 11th to 4th graders. However, what you should be teaching them as Americans, citizens together, we should be teaching that America was attacked by radical Islamic terrorists and that Americans unified afterwards because we are a strong nation that are bound together by our shared American identity. Well, this teacher did nothing of the sort. There was a child on screen who literally asked, who attacked us? And the teacher's response was, well, it was a mindset. And I witnessed that in real time. And I felt like my head flew off my body, and I poked in my head. And, my poor daughter at the time, mom pokes in and says, radical Islamic terrorists. And then I went on to say how Americans united. And from that point on, I said, this cannot be education. And I started speaking out online for the first time. And that is during the time period when our CEO, Marissa Streit, discovered me online and said, hey, we're going to start a parent and teacher group here at PragerU. I don't know you, but you want to come in and talk about creating it with us? And I said, yes. So that's how I ended up here.
They have a real knack for that. I know because I've been listening to Dennis since I was a teenager, and Alan Estrin, who runs PragerU with Marissa, he's always just been really great at just catching someone, having that eye, tapping them on the shoulder, and saying, "Let's do something together." So it's really interesting. That is its own skill, having a good eye for talent. So good for her and good for you for doing this. Yeah, it is interesting. It's a real blind spot with the public schools in terms of just the history departments, anything current affairs. I went to public school most of my life. I went to private school for high school, and what I found, I was already pretty politically astute by that point. I found that there's probably less bias in the history classes than some of the other classes because the parents were on it. So there were enough parents who were saying, no, you can't do that. So they were paying attention. So a lot of the bias was, offhanded comments from people in the science department, stuff like that. It wasn't, the history department was mostly kind of by the books because the parents wouldn't let them get away with it. But that's because the parents were super active and there were 14 kids in a class. It's not like that. If you're just getting funneled into a school because you're in the neighborhood and there's 700 kids per grade, there's no way they're on it. It is on the parents to be on it, and it's on the communities to be to take a part. And that's what PragerU is doing. So PragerU's kids, you guys have been around for, I guess, 5 years, the kids division. Tell me about the kids division.
Right. It's been since 2021. Spring of 2021 was when we launched. Okay. I started here the beginning of 2021. And we literally, I remember it was myself, Marissa, and a couple other people sitting around a table. And Marissa said, I remember it as clear as day, she said, we have to start with teaching our youngest learners our American values. And in that moment, I froze because I wasn't going to admit it out loud, but in my mind, now mind you, I was raised in a household who loved America. We had the flag. We loved America. We were, all of the things that I still advocate for today. But in my mind, in that moment, I thought, wait, what are our American values? And I panicked because I realized what a lacking education I had, not to the fault of my parents. They were just naive. It's that old Ronald Reagan quote, freedom isn't passed through the bloodstream. We have to continually protect it. And I learned very quickly, got reminded, oh yeah, our American values are perseverance, hard work, resilience, equality under God, all of these things. And so we started just wildly creating this little storytime show called Otto's Tales, which has about 75 episodes now on our website, PragerUkids.com. And it was all about our American values and our folk tales. And those, evolved into books. We now have 3 different series. We have about 30 books about landmarks and American holidays and the people who keep our communities running, police officers, teachers, all of the things that the youngest learners should know about. And the team at PragerU Kids has expanded to about 30 people. And, it's not just me. In the beginning, you graciously introduced me as the woman behind this Trailblazers, but I'll tell you, I wish I could take credit for this.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. And we have credentialed teachers putting this all together. But
And I'm going to comment on that too, because these things are so well put together. But let me speak to the Otto's Tales too, because I have younger kids. So we do a little more Otto's Tales reading in the household. And it's just such a comfort to be able to pick up books designed for kids that you're getting positive values. And it's not like right wing. It's just honest, and it doesn't crap on our country. Like, it makes our country seem kind of cool, which is just God forbid. And I wanted to rant, and I know I shared it with some of the PragerU folks who I connect with a couple of weeks ago about how horrified and frustrated I am with the Scholastic Book Fair, and I think it needs to die. And I got mostly positive reactions to it, but some people were saying that I'm discouraging kids from reading. It's like, no, I'm not discouraging kids from reading. My kids are going to be readers. I'm 1 for 1 so far in terms of the ones who have reading age, but it's not. I don't want them to get woke and stupid books. I want them to get smart books that are enriching And I feel like that we've turned books into sort of toys and ways for celebrities to get on the Today Show. And I would like for the books to be educational and to be enriching, so families to connect on that. And that's what PragerU Kids are doing. And the latest effort is with the Trailblazers of America series, holding some of them up. Again, there's 7 of them. I'm holding up I've got the Johnny Appleseed, which I was going through this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Lewis and Clark. John Sutter. I know nothing about John Sutter. It's a hand up. So maybe you'll help me.
Me too. And that's the crazy part. I mean, what we've done is we've created all these different video series, book series, values, civics, financial literacy, U.S. history, world history. This is, of course, American history. And to be totally brutally honest, I myself previously did not know the full fascinating stories of these frontiersmen in the Trailblazers series. And yeah, it talks about history. Yeah, it talks about the expansion of America. But what it really talks about is that grit and American spirit and perseverance that these men, Bass Reeves, did you know who Bass Reeves was? I had no idea who Bass Reeves was. He was a lawman. He escaped from slavery. He, allegedly arrested, hundreds and, thousands, some people say, of criminals in the Wild West. I mean, this was a guy, law was his, he was a lawman, and he's a fascinating character.
But who has time to read about him when we could be reading about Colin Kaepernick?
Right. But our boy, exactly my point. Our boys, actually our girls too. They need heroes.
Sure.
They, now in classrooms, you go to any elementary school in Southern California, and the majority of schools, Alex, have set up these safe space rooms where if your child is having a hard day, you raise your hand and you go to the safe space room and you can veg out on the beanbag. No, you think Bass Reeves was vegging out on a beanbag? Let these kids read about the heroes that built this country.
No, he should veg out on the floor like a real man. That's how I was doing it back in the day. No, this is we got a preview for the series. So Misty, why don't you roll this for us? We got some video here so people can get a little flavor for it. Those of you watching on the streams here, check this out. All right, it's good stuff. All right, so we start digging into Johnny Appleseed, and I want to talk a little bit about the format because there's a lot of facts in here. There's storytelling. There's a lot of pictures, and I'm just trying to describe it for the audio audience. And there's even a recipe here for applesauce, and this thing checks out. Like, this is very similar to my recipe, and I'm a bit of a gourmand, Jill. This might be news to you, but that's how I spend a lot of my free time. And this recipe looks absolutely excellent, which shows me that you guys put in the work. It's a huge operation. PragerU, you guys have like 3 floors of a nondescript building in Encino that I'm over there in that neck of the woods quite a bit. And these are people working hard on this thing. This is not an accident. It's not a joke. This is not 2 people coming together to try to sell product. You're really trying to educate people. Talk to us about the process of putting something like this together, how you chose the topics, and what sort of the rigor that goes into it.
There is rigor that goes into it, and I'm glad you're tackling this because, a lot of times, especially, if you look at quote unquote mainstream media, they're always attacking us saying, oh, they're not educators. They don't know anything. Here's the deal. These books, every single piece of content we make here, this particular book, Trailblazers of America, was created by, obviously, Marissa was one of the visionaries. She's always the main visionary here. But we have several credentialed teachers, people with their master's degree. This particular book was written by one of our teachers. His name is Justin Kite. He has a master's in history. He taught history in real schools, public schools, not some, phony baloney, real public schools in real cities in Texas and Illinois. He wrote these stories with historical knowledge, credentials, you name it. Everything checks out. Everything is fact checked beyond belief. We sort of go overboard when it comes to the fact checking because, we want to be truthful with it. At the same time,
one error that's wrong, and it will be an absolute scandal for you. I lived through this at Breitbart in the early days of Breitbart, is that I think we're the most accurate news outlet in the world, and part of it is because of our haters. Well, we're high integrity people, but it's but even if you don't believe what I just said, do the math. If we get stuff wrong, it goes viral online. They go to our advertisers and say, you can't spend money at these places. Like, it is a huge headache it's not worth it. It's not worth it to get anything wrong. You have to get it right.
100%. And that said, as much as we rely on facts, we also want to make it fun and entertaining for the kids. So this particular book, part of Justin's vision with this was that it be written like a movie. Like, when you watch a historical movie, sure, the facts are there, but then there's also artistic, I don't want to say like there's artistic choices that are made to make it entertaining for the viewer. So there are certain artistic choices made in this when telling the stories of these men that are in the book to make it entertaining, and to make it really adventuresome for the kids that are reading, because we want children to be fascinated with history. If they're not fascinated with history, they're not going to care about it when it comes time to actually count, when they're adults, when they're making decisions for how our country is going to be run and what's happening in their communities. So we take this gift of, being called to serve, as we say, very, very, very seriously in all ways.
Okay, so I want to talk about PragerU's for everyone, and I've had enough PragerU guests in the show. The audience knows that even I use the 5-minute videos when I need to brush up on something. But tell me about who's this series, a Trailblazer series, what age group you're trying to hit, and then for parents in the audience or young people in the audience, what do you recommend sort of for each individualized group? Where should people go and make sure that they're tackling the right stuff?
Sure. So everything is on our hub, PragerUkids.com. The books, all of our books, including Trailblazers, is available on Amazon. And when it comes to what age group for this particular Trailblazer series, well, you said that your child is 6. I think that's fantastic because this can absolutely be read aloud. It's a great family read aloud. You can read it, before tucking them in bed at night, or if you're doing a family camp out by the campfire, this is a fantastic thing to take with you and do the read aloud in the accent, like telling the story of the Old West. That's fun too. For teachers in the classroom, this is a phenomenal supplemental resource that they can use if and when they are teaching about westward expansion, which usually U.S. history is in the 5th grade and the 8th grade. I have a 7th and 8th grader. They dig this. This is also their vibe because, it's like we think of kids as, a 13-year-old might like that. But guess what? I'm in it. I have junior high kids. The 13-year-olds still sometimes they don't want to admit it, but they enjoy the things for the younger kids, too, because it's easy for them. And when it's educational, like this book, it makes it all the better because they absorb it easier. So it's for teachers. It's for parents who want to have a good time with their kids bonding. It's for homeschoolers. It really is for everyone. That sounds so generic and cliche, but it really is. It's for me. I never learned about Bass Reeves. I didn't learn much about Daniel Boone. It's also for us so that we know how we can teach our children about these great things if we didn't learn them when we were growing up.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I don't think you actually outgrow it. I think it's more what's the sort of minimum. I think if you got a precocious first grader, you can get into it. And then pretty much from there on up. And then if you don't, then if your kids are younger, go get some of those Otto's Tales, and that's worth it as well. Yeah. But I feel like even for grownups and the young at heart, as they say, that I think you like it. Jill Simonian, such good stuff. Let's give those calls to action again. If people want to support PragerU and get the new series, where do they go? What do they do? PragerUkids.com. You can subscribe to our email. It is free. You can get all of our new offerings delivered to your inbox twice a week just to see what we have going on. But all of the videos are free to watch. PragerUkids.com. And the books are available on Amazon. These are my favorite people in the whole movement, the PragerU folks. So always worth supporting and checking out what they're up to, and some of the hardest working too. Jill, you're a delight. Come back soon. Thank you so much.